everybody. We are going to get started. So my name is Lingaraj Patel, go by Raj. So we are all here for the PBC Connect. So I welcome you all to this event. We have very interesting sessions planned. We have this panel that's going to start, lunch, followed by another panel. So I'm looking forward to spending some time with you here. So let's get started with a couple of things. So first, let me see how many of you have been to Black Hat, let's say 5 times. Oh, I see quite a few veterans. You must be pros by now. So how many of you have been here 3 to 5 times? 3 to, yeah, a couple of you. And how many of you are here for the very first time? Oh, quite a few faces, right? So very good. I think so how's the show coming up for you? Are you having a good time? All right. Yeah, so Black Hat event that we have, I've been here for this is the 3rd time that I'm coming here. And the event itself keeps bigger and more interesting, and the impact of AI, I see that is increasing, right? Even just looking at my own work, I'm sure it's similar to what you are doing. Just writing an email, for example, or getting a document summarized, or sending an action items, maybe for you or for your colleagues that you want to collaborate with. So those are the kind of things that we have going on. And in terms of the impact that it is having on the security teams is huge. As you all can imagine, as you all know, many of you are probably talking about the solutions that are in here. So that's the topic that we are going to talk about right now. And one story, I'd like to start whatever we do with a story. I'll start with a story that quite made a very big impact, very big influence on me as I was coming in. So how many of you flew into Las Vegas? Several of you, right? So as I was flying in, one thing that was very unmistakable was the barren land around Las Vegas. Just desert. I'm like, there was no greenery, nothing. And I was thinking, you know what, why? Why is this place so barren? And then as we were going over Death Valley is the hottest, driest place in the United States. Of course, it's called Death Valley for a reason, because there's no life that comes in. But as we started coming into Las Vegas, as it started descending, the landscape changed. There was so much greenery, and then the neon lights started twinkling. And I thought, you know what kind of dreamers must have dreamed a city like this in the middle of a desert? So I look back at the history of the city. In 1931, apparently that's when Hoover Dam came, that brought in water. And there were dreamers who believed that Hoover Dam could be built. Even building Hoover Dam itself was considered a miracle. There's a lot of people who did not believe that it could be built. There's a lot of naysayers who said, you know what? It can never be built, because an engineering project of that scale had never been done. Oh. That's how it always happens, right? When you're on to something really big, there's a sense of optimism, and there's also a sense of dread about something new that's coming. And in many ways, that was the challenge that generation faced. And look at what they've built, such a beautiful city. We are all here and coming together to exchange ideas. So that's the power of the dreams. That's the power of coming together and going through the obstacles to make it happen. So in many ways, for our generation, the challenge that we have is AI, using AI. For how many of you, AI in equal measure inspires you about the possibilities that come with it? And for how many of you, it inspires dread? Both. Exactly. It's one of those times. If you go back to 1930s, that's what Hoover Dam inspired. People said, you know what, you can build it, but I'm not sure, you know what, we are trying out a lot of new things that's never been tried. We are going to try them here. That was the challenge for that generation. This is the challenge for our generation. So the Purple Book community that we have, I'll just give a quick background about Purple Book community. How many of you have heard about Purple Book community? Some of you, right? It's a community that started off with 30 members to write a book, and it has since grown to 600 members now. Security leaders predominantly, application security, product security, and I call Purple Book community is a community of dreamers, just like the dreamers who built the Hoover Dam. In a world surrounded by naysayers that security cannot be shipped securely, how many people believe software can be shipped securely? Very difficult. Just with AI, it's made it even more challenging. I was just talking to a security leader earlier, and he was telling how marketing team, by the way, I'm marketing too, so team has built an application because they thought it'll help the customer. And the security leader was talking to marketing team, do you know about the security implications of this? He said, I don't know. I'm like, do you know there are secrets in this code that you have built? He said, I'm like, what are those secrets? That's the world that we are all entering. So how about if you had a community where you come together and talk about these issues? So that's what Purple Book community does. We have 600 people that we get together twice a month, every month, once a month sometimes. And we also have centers of excellence. So whatever conversation that you're going to have, I'm sure it's going to be very good. I had a precursor to this conversation. But this conversation doesn't have to end here. I'll tell you how we can be part of this dialogue beyond this itself. So more later. So for now, I'd like to invite Karthik Swarnam. So Karthik, he's my colleague at Armor Code 2. He's Chief Security and Trust Officer. And a bit of background about Karthik. Karthik, he's a 4-time CISO. He was CISO at Kroger, TransUnion, and DirecTV before this, and also heading security at AT&T. So a lot of experience building and scaling security programs. He has gone through the basics of building security program to now securing it with the AI. But even in the AI world, basics are very important, right? So with this, Karthik, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Raj, for the opportunity. So as Raj said, Karthik Swarnam, I'm with Armor Code. I have a few responsibilities at Armor Code. I'm the Chief Security Officer for Armor Code. Security company, you want to keep it secure, as well as customer success. After our customers buy our product, it's my team that's responsible to make sure that we deliver, make sure that it gets used, number one, and number two, and number three, it helps you realize value, right? So that's kind of my responsibilities. And as Raj said, I've been a security practitioner for almost 30 years. Spent about 12 years in consulting, Accenture security practice, and then about 17 years as CISO, and now on the product side, right? So I've kind of gone through the journey. So, but I do envy today, though. I think a lot of things are changing so rapidly and so fast. And when you talk about AI, I think about 30 months ago, I think we were playing with the AI, and every company had an AI initiative. It was like more of a soft project, nothing mainstream. But like, man, what's happening in the last 6 to 9 months? It's mainstream, right? I think AI is generating code. I think companies are saying 40% of the code, 50% of the code that gets generated by AI, right? And one thing that we need to keep in mind now, I think, as I said, I've been in the security business for 30 years. When I started, people said, just give me some firewalls and network protection and I'm good to go, right? And I'm one of those guys, as well as the entire practice was much more focused on infrastructure and data, and kind of started to ignore the software landscape of security, right? And yet we created all this technical debt and all these problems. And I can foresee that if we don't address, as the AI is coming into the development lifecycle and as part of the application development problem, if we don't embrace and start to secure now, we'll create the same stagnant problem 15 years from today or 10 years from today, right? So I think we have an opportunity to get ahead of the game, and that's what we want to explore today. As the world embraces AI, how do we need to start to think about securing those things? And believe it or not, every CISO that you would go and talk to today are not the security professionals, right? They are the business enablers, right? Now the business comes and demands saying that you're an enabler to me. Just let me get that faster. Don't even put your brakes on, right? So at least we should have kept the hat saying that, hey, we're here to protect you, but we now said we are here to enable you, so we better get on that bandwagon to be able to enable them as fast as they want to move, right? So as the world is moving very fast, how do we embrace security into that? Right? With that, I have a few panelists with me that are joining me to explore this topic. So with that, I'll kind of invite Matt Walker. I'll let them introduce themselves as they come on, and then Matt, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So, hi everybody. I'm Matt Walker. I'm Managing Director of Security and Compliance for Goosehead Insurance. So, glad to be here. Looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you. Billy Norwood.
Hi, everybody. My name is Billy Norwood. I'm a CISO for FF Enterprises. It's really a company basically making investment about 3 years.
And Paulo.
Hello, everyone. My name is Paulo Mundo. I am the head of application security at The Motley Fool. We have, a mid-sized company dealing with 200 or so developers. One day I woke up and saw that everyone was integrating LLMs into our applications, and that scared me. So I came to get ahead of this game, and hopefully what I've learned will be useful.
All right, cool. So, and last I have Pierre. Welcome, Pierre.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Pierre Moalem. I'm the CISO of Delinea. Delinea is a leader in identity security space and privileged access management space, and I'm thrilled to be here.
All right, thank you. So we have like panelists from a variety of industries who are already embracing AI in the development lifecycle and kind of wrestling the problem that we have in front of us, right? So with that, let's dive in, right? So Pierre, what do you see as as the world is talking about AI in your environment, in your place? How are you guys embracing AI, and what are the risk landscape that you're seeing in?
Yeah, thank you. So we started with making AI available to our developers, to the broader organization. It's still driven based on requests from different organizations or different parts of the business. But the main thing is we want to make sure that the organization is able to take advantage of what AI has to offer, as long as within certain guardrails. And we can talk more about those guardrails in a little bit. But we're encouraging people to adopt AI and to make sure that they're using AI as long as it's in a responsible manner. And as I mentioned, within the guardrails that we have established.
Okay, very good, very good. Have you guys, any of you have seen shadow development work going on in your organizations or in anywhere else that you've seen? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So our AI journey really started a couple years ago. We started to build out a custom LLM for our internal use for our insurance agents when they had questions, right? Like we can feed all the policy information from every carrier in every state into an LLM so that our agents don't have to spend hours researching an answer. They could ask the LLM a targeted question, get a reference back, and find that answer. But in doing that, we ended up with our developers just going kind of gung-ho, right? And we found out that we had integrated certain AI agents into our IDEs that didn't necessarily go through our third-party risk review, that didn't necessarily go through a hardening model, that didn't necessarily go through what are the data flows and how is that new tool that they just integrated into the IDE possibly leaking data or possibly sending our code, our intellectual property back out to that AI company, whatever it is, right? Like I was talking earlier, and how much can you really trust that OpenAI isn't going to train on your data, even if you've signed that enterprise agreement with them? They still get your data. Are they training on it or not? Like there's a lot of trust that you've had to extend. And now we're kind of in the boat of starting to pull that back in. So, a couple years ago, we said, let's open this. Let's let our devs go full bore. Let's really figure out what the benefit to the business is. Let's not be afraid of it. And now it's more of we can see where things have started to be exposed. We can see where data might be leaking. We can see where we might be pulling in risky code. Like one concern is if we're using these AI tools to help our developers write code, is there any possibility that they then cross into copyright territory or things like that because the AI tool has said, oh, hey, here's the couple lines of code that you need to use to achieve what you're after, but is that code somebody else's patented code? Right? We have to figure those things out. So those are the concerns that we're facing. How we're addressing it is, we look at what are all of the different tools to monitor that data. How are we doing effective DLP with that information? And then are we starting to get our developers trained up on responsible use of these AI tools? So
that's interesting, Matt, right? When you say keep using the developers, I kind of equate in my mind almost every single employee is a developer. They're writing some white code, they're writing some pieces of code, and they're putting it out there, right? So I think that line is blurring. Any of your current practices, like Billy, maybe I'd like to hear from you, right? Any of your current practices scaled up to this next generational phenomena of AI coming into development lifecycle, or?
Yeah, obviously, pharmaceutical distribution, we have a smaller software size, but we do have several little SaaS platforms for managing temperature, managing tracking shipments and things like that we've built.
I think that that's the scary part. If the people outside of my dev team are using it,
Absolutely.
they're like, I'm going to write a little code for this, and where's ChatGPT and Cursor pulling it from? Like people's homework assignments that are posted on the internet, right? As far as code copying, but I think that it fell in well with kind of how we already were doing with our software development lifecycle. Having a senior review it after it goes through, using secure code scanning, which we've been doing for a while with JFrog, make sure that we kind of on that entire lifecycle. So for us, they were in the development side was the first part of the company that we gave the okay to use because they already had guardrails around it. We are still working on releasing like Copilot for everybody, but because we have the guardrails around what we're doing with AppSec, I think it's been helpful. We have. I wouldn't say like we have the best secure coding developers, so it's helping them move faster.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's introducing that many more vulnerabilities from what they had in the past based on what I'm seeing in JFrog. So it seems to be very good for us because we don't want to be a giant software firm. That's not really what we do. So that we can keep our team lean. It's been very helpful.
Yeah, if I may add, one of the catalysts for us for driving the adoption of AI is the risk of shadow AI. That's a concern AI is such a big productivity boost across the board, whether it's in development or more broader the organization, that is going to be really difficult to prevent people from using it. So instead of having the risk of, team members resorting to the use of shadow AI one way or another, we want to make that capability available to them so that there's no need for them to do so.
Yeah. I mean, I think traditional, what I think, if I want to paraphrase what you're saying, Pierre, is I think traditional practices are you disclose and you have traditional tools and anything that is disclosed gets assessed and then evaluated, right? And I think we're moving down the path of, I don't think so those traditional tools are going to hold up because we need to be able to continuously do it and we need to be able to go discover if there are additional codes that have been developed and generated and put in, right? I think one of the things that I see is as we talk about SIG AI, right? And I think in RSA and Black Hat, everywhere else, right? I think the AI is very focused on prompt engineering. When you talk about AI security, very focused on DSPM and data. And I think the app development lifecycle, where we keep talking about 40% of the code is going to be generated by AI, yet traditional tools start to ignore how are we even going to put our hands around the topic, right? So lots of focus from security companies on data and prompt and usage and access, less on the development lifecycle. So I think they need to be able to start to shift, right? Otherwise, we do have a problem in hand, right? Yeah. So when you talk about development life cycles, Paolo, what kind of practices that you have started to embrace? You talked about LLM, you talked about AI generated code. So what are some of the practices that you have employed?
Yeah, so I mean, we're seeing a lot of generated code, by AI as well. I think the strategy that we're trying to do is to shift even further left, right? Because currently, we're putting guardrails on the CI/CD pipeline. Why not put it even earlier in the IDE itself, so that when developers are vibe coding and they're generating code, they're alerted immediately that you're about to commit this very critical vulnerability. Those are the SemGraphs, the Sneaks of the world. You can integrate an MCP server and get that functionality. And if you want to even take it a step further, you can even have AI fix those vulnerabilities. There are vendors out there that sort of do that, the mobs of the world, that are able to even fix it even before what's going to be committed.
Yeah, no, that's good. So any insights in terms of modern technologies, tools that you guys can share for the audience in terms of what you're starting to use or leverage? Tooling wise, I know there's a lot of talk about ASPM.
Yeah, tooling wise, right? We've had a lot of success with things like Sneak, right? We've had a lot of success with things like GitHub Advanced Security. We've had some success with Copilot. And, as we continue to evaluate kind of what's next, I think we're looking for what are those tools that we can find those vulnerabilities at time of code being written. So,
aside from the shift left technologies, I think it also makes sense to look at what's being done on the shift right. Mm-hmm. Can we put agents on our endpoints so that if a request that's trying to do something, that's trying to access some sensitive sync, then it can block in real time. That's the sort of the oligos of the world that we're investigating.
Good. Good. Anything you want to add, Pierre, from tooling and tech landscape perspective that you have adopted?
Yeah, I mean, ASPM comes into play. So as the AI further kind of empowers and accelerate the rate of development and how much code is being generated, we need to make sure that we have tools in place that can help kind of keep up with that volume, so it doesn't become a bottleneck and negate the benefit of what AI is presenting. So that's where tools like ASPM come to place, where kind of tools that provide AI capabilities to help with, detection and remediation of vulnerability also comes into play. That is something that we're currently tackling at Delinea, where we're starting the journey for introducing ASPM capabilities and figuring out how that can help us further accelerate and keep up with the rate of development, with the increased rate of development that AI capabilities are introducing.
Do you evaluate code from, is it human generated or it's AI generated, and do you have a ability to understand what traits that belong to each of those categories? Or?
So currently we don't differentiate between the two different types. All code that's being checked in, generated, whatever you want to call it, goes through the same process. But at some point we need to leverage what the capabilities that AI can introduce to validate that code and to check it. At some point it might make sense to have, as AI becomes more prominent and is generating more code and at some point, generating like full-blown applications, to also have AI make sure and validate the security of those applications, kind of like a self-healing or whatever you want to call it. We're not there yet, obviously. Right now, all code goes through the same review process, which quite a bit is, dependent on individuals.
That kind of generates a volume problem, right?
Yeah.
So how you want to keep up with it? Are you going to drop every other packet or not?
Well, I mean, that's where tools like SPM come into play. That's where capabilities like AI-driven capabilities come into play. It's still kind of a chicken and egg, right? What comes first? What do we need to? How we want to keep up with what the changing the dynamic of how we're producing code, how are we generating code? So it's something that we're actively tackling on. But we don't have a clear solution for the change in the landscape that AI is bringing.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to think about AI capabilities in the AppSec space.
Okay, so I mean, it's good. So ASPM type capabilities, and if you can layer on top kind of AI enabled or AI capable ASPM, then your ability to get to the handle of the problem quicker and sooner, right?
Absolutely, and not just ASPM, but also within the tools that are, we talked about Sneak, we talked about tools that, exactly, have capabilities within those tools as well to help, reduce and address findings early on, so it's not fully reliant on, tools like ASPM, et cetera.
I mean, I hear this term, right, tool fatigue across in the industry, right? So I think, Billy, what do you think of this stuff, and how do we get there, right? And I have my own point of view. I'll hold back.
Yeah.
I'll have to hear from you. So.
Well, if you ask my boss, who's report to the CIO, they're all about why do you have so many tools?
Yeah.
Like infrastructure only needs these couple of things, and you need everything. And there's a lot of different areas to look at it, and it's hard to juggle. And I think with tool fatigue, I felt like I was getting more enterprise, it's kind of settling down. But now there's so many cool, very specific tools. They may be AI powered. That I think that makes it even harder, right? Because I need all these niche cases. So we keep kind of moving that direction. While I mentioned JFrog, so we're maybe doing some code scanning and making sure we have proper, we're not putting in any sort of vulnerabilities or using third-party stuff that shouldn't be copyright for, and we get our SBOM and all that built out. Then we're okay, well, it was safe at the time.
Yeah.
Now it's published in the cloud. So now I'm okay, well, how am I making sure it's okay? And with API security and things like that, right? When we're trying to transfer everything's trying to be interconnected, right? And it's are we how open is that API? Yeah. Are we talking to someone internally? Are we talking to someone externally? Is it talking in the same cloud because we're multi-cloud, or is it jumping to another cloud? And how do I make sure it's secure? So I feel I keep as I keep trying to shrink my tooling,
Yeah.
it just keeps growing.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll share my opinion as well, right? I mean, I think when you talk about tool fatigue, I think people misunderstand and misrepresent, saying that okay, there's no more tools to be allowed, right? But I don't think so. That's what people mean by that. People mean by I would like to embrace some new tools and bring some new tools on, but what am I going to get rid of it, right? I think we need to be able to start to challenge, capabilities and tools and solutions that we brought in to the organization. I had a rule of when I was in the practitioner on the practitioner side, I had a rule of something, anything that is 3 years and older, we challenge that its validity anymore, right? And it's okay to say, well, I made the decision to bring the tool in, but I'm saying that's the wrong tool now, and that's okay if it is 3 years down the road, right? So, but unfortunately, a lot of companies keep on adding to it rather than ability to be able to say, how do I shift and how do I also deprecate, right? So that's kind of where the CIOs and the C-suite says, well, I mean, like 72 tools, like 98 tools. When is this going to? When is this?
Are we
going to end, right?
optimizing them, right? And
Yeah.
so that's great. And I tell all my vendors when I first talking about onboarding that process, I want to see because they'll just keep growing, right? So
Yeah.
I need to know your roadmap a little bit to see if it matches. But I was like, how often does your customer success manager meet with me to make sure that we're getting the most out of the tool and the new things they're using?
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for,
Go ahead, man.
for tool fatigue, something that I think drives that for a lot of us are our compliance requirements.
Sure.
As more and more states publish more compliance requirements, we discover that there's gaps in our existing tooling, and the only way to remain compliant is to get a tool that can cover that gap. So the tool sets continually increase because of some of the compliance-driven requirements.
Sure, absolutely.
I'll also add that when I first started in my role, I never really understood the argument for best of suite versus best of breed. I was always best of breed, right? Because I like tools.
Yeah.
I want to get the best tools. But as I've matured, I've started to realize like best of suite actually has a really good point in that you don't always have to be shifting to the next shiny thing,
Yeah.
right? So I think that perspective is really important as well.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a point, right? I think it's the best of breed, having that common layer independence type approaches are very essential to it, right? And also, I think when you look at tooling, I agree with you, right? You don't have to go for a new tool if your tool can keep on evolving with that, right? I mean, I think I've started to see a lot of the solution providers have done that, right? Kind of keep up with what's currently happening and going on, right? So if we want to shift gears and say, well, if I just want to get closing comment type stuff, right? Where tomorrow morning, next week, I have an AI development going on in my environment. What would I do differently, or what should I be embracing it based on your experience? Love to get that from each of you, right? Like, what do I do differently next week?
I think what we need to don't slow down, right?
Yeah.
Continually evolve your posture, continually figure out what are those boundaries we can push, but do it in a way that keeps in mind all of the risk that you're introducing. Something that a lot of companies have kind of stumbled into that I've witnessed is potentially violating written contracts with third parties who, if you've got a third party that says, don't send our data to an AI tool, have you verified that you're not sending that data from that company that you work with into the tool? So there's a lot on the compliance side that I think people need to keep in mind and be aware of. But that would be my advice going into next week, right? Continue to evolve, continue to push the limit, but also keep the company's responsibility around compliance in mind as you do it.
It's really important to know what you're giving these third parties. We were talking about the Replit scenario, or the thing that happened where a user accidentally deleted their database, right? Because the AI was confused about something and decided to just throw its hands up. So that the fact that you can over permission your AIs and they can do catastrophic things is something we need to all be worried about. Let's give them the right access, understand what capabilities they can and cannot do, and hopefully that will prevent something like that.
I think thinking of compliance, and you're talking about over provisioning and having maybe human in the loop type, so you have some control to take over. Here.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, don't fight it, embrace it. Just make sure you have the right governance in place so that you're defining the guardrails for what AI can do and how it should be used and how data is managed within that process. But ultimately, the positive and what AI can provide in terms of productivity boosts, et cetera, is really hard to ignore, and it's going to be a tough challenge to try to push against that. Just make sure that the guardrails and the governance is in place as AI is being adopted.
Right. Good.
You mentioned earlier about training, right? Human in the loop or training, because you mentioned the tool can help train somebody.
Yeah.
Which I think that's key, right? I mean, right now, let's hope we have a lot of developers are pretty good out there and stuff now, but there might be some new developers coming up, and that's all they've learned was vibe coding. This is what they do.
Yeah.
So creating that security champion, that risk champion within that software development team to help train everybody and let them understand what they're seeing.
Yeah.
I think is very key, outside of just tooling. I know we focus on tech a lot, but I feel like that human element and getting that champion, getting those people trained is very key as well.
Very good. So governance and training, right? And I have one thing though, right? I think Armor Code just released this white paper called Securing the Future, Managing the Risk with an AI-generated code. I was just reading through it, and I mean, there's a lot of valuable stuff in there, right? And I think every security professional should read it, in my opinion, or CISO should read it, because again, as I said, I grew up in the CISO community for a while. We always focused on data and infrastructure and less on AppSec side of the house. But this one was like an eye-opener for myself as well, right? Because it kind of talks about you cannot ignore the development life cycle and how do you secure it, especially the time frame that we're living in, right? Which is where the code is generated faster than anybody can even consume it, and there are tools that helps us do it. So I think this helps you to understand what those consequences and risks are and try to be able to do that, right? And I think these are all basic hygiene things, right? Focus on compliance, having governance in place, having training in place, having the appropriate tooling in place for you to be able to embrace it, right? So that's kind of the panel. I thank you all, right? So I would say, well, you can't slow things down. So I think you need to start to embrace the speed of how everything gets done. So I think we need to get on with that journey. But I also tell manual practices are not going to scale. So I would highly encourage complement your manual practices and standards along with tools that can help you get there. So I think that would be the right way to approach it, right? So that way you are able to quantify it. And again, as people said, shifting left and shifting right, from a development perspective and from a security perspective, and be able to catch it. That's going to be important. So with that, I appreciate all your time this morning, and I think lunch is next. So I'll hand it over to Raj back. Thank you, Raj. Good.
Let's take a minute to just inside. Let's give another round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences here. And as I was saying, the dialogue that started here doesn't have to end here. The Purple Book community, the way it's set up, the dialogue continues virtually. So if you are interested in being part of it, I would encourage you to go take a look at the Purple Book community. And we have meetings, virtual meetings, about once or twice a month. And we are also starting centers of excellence, where we'll have a small group of 15 to 20. Just imagine you're in a group of 15 to 20 and we have experts like this. And they are sharing their experience, and you are sharing your perspectives on what's going on. And Chatham House rules apply. What gets discussed there stays there, just like in Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? So what happens in those meetings stays in those meetings. So that's an open space for you to come have those discussions. I encourage you to do that. And before we break into the lunch, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors that are here. We have, of course, Armor Code, we have Run Security, Beyond Identity, Valence, AIM Security, Immersive, Portswigger, Endor Labs, Erius, Risk, and Oligo. So they are here. They are all over. As you are going through having your lunch, please meet with them. Some of the problems that we are talking about here, they have innovations that solve those problems. So having said that, thank you very much for the panel again.